Okay, we're going to begin. The story of today will begin with a story of a story of a student of Reb Yaakov Yitzchak of Pshischa, who was called the Yid Hakadosh. I'm not sure why he was given that name. Maybe Rabbi Olensky, do you know why he was called the Yid Hakadosh? Or anyone here know?
I think it was because it was Abbas Yisrael.
Okay, all right, maybe. So he was given the name the Holy Jew, possibly because of loving every single Yid, which that itself deserves a whole class on, I think, that you're called holy when you love every single Yid. Thank you, David. That's quite a statement, quite a lesson that we're given the name holy because of our Ahavas Yisrael, our love for every Yid. In any event, so the Yid HaKadosh had a student, a famous student, Reb Simcha Banim also of Pshischa. And he once told him, I want you to travel to a certain town and stay in this inn. And you have something that I want you to learn. I want you to learn something there. So he traveled with his students. He figured, let's all learn some lesson. We're supposed to learn something. My Rebbe told me to travel here. It could be, I'm not sure if he actually told him exactly which inn to stay at, or he just said, go to that city and you're going to learn something in the city. And in any event, he went to this inn and he stayed there. And when it came time to eat, maybe dinner, I guess they were. So the host, the innkeeper said, well, I don't actually have a dairy to serve today, but I have meat. I have a meat dinner. You're welcome to join us. So sure enough, the students and Reb Simcha Banim, they started talking. Well, do we want to have? Do we trust the kashrus? Do we trust the level of kosher of the meat that's going to be served? So they started asking the host, who slaughtered the meat. Could we, maybe we could meet with him. We just want to know who he is. Do they know the laws? So they started asking all these questions. So the host said, you're so careful about what goes into your mouth. Are you that careful about the same way about what comes out of your mouth? And when Reb Simcha Banim heard that, he said, that's it. We've learned our lesson. We came here just to hear that lesson. We can head back. So I'm not sure if they stayed and ate the meal or not, but the lesson they learned was being so careful about what goes into your mouth, which is good, but you should be just as careful, or maybe more careful, about what comes out of your mouth. And what that means is, it really means a lot of things. It means improper words, like things that are not appropriate for a Jewish person to speak, just because it's common language among the Goyim, doesn't mean we should use those type of words. It's just below our dignity, Hashem's people, to speak, the language, even though it's, the way everyone talks, but there are certain words it's just not appropriate for a Yid to say. And I hear it all the time because a lot of times people tell me things and then they say, sorry, Rabbi, but let me tell they want to say a certain word, a certain term, and they say it and they say, sorry, Rabbi, like they're a little embarrassed to use certain terminology. But that's and I understand they're trying to bring out a certain point, and when you say it in the term, in certain words, you sort of bring out you bring out what you're trying to say much better. But the fact is, it's below our dignity. It's not right for a yid to desecrate our mouths with such language. And then, of course, gossip is another type of words that we should be careful about, because we could it could ruin someone's livelihood. You could you could ruin someone's shidduch, someone's marriage. There are numerous things that you could cause you could ruin by speaking negative. You could also teach your children terrible things by speaking negative, having that negativity. It's just it actually lets people start they live off that negativity. They learn from that negativity. And then you have words that are embarrassing, harassing, abusive. When you embarrass someone, when you hurt someone's feelings, when you bother someone with words, these are also words that we have to be careful what words come out of our mouth. It's always nice to have a good time, but do we really take advantage of someone else by us having a good time? A lot of people think in order to have a good time, you gotta put someone down. You need to make someone the subject of your laughter, of your mocking, and this way everyone will have a good laugh. They'll enjoy it. They'll see some type of a at least in your mind, you're having a great time. I don't know about the we call the sacrifice. I don't know if the sacrifice feels that way, but the leader often feels great about finding some type of sacrifice to some person, sacrifice to be the topic of the source of the discussion. So that is these are all ways we have to be careful. I should mention that there is a verse in Mishlei, in Proverbs, that it says, "Hachayim v'hamaves biyad haloshin." The life and death is in the hands of the tongue, which means that you could really kill someone with your tongue. As the Talmud says, that better to throw yourself into the furnace than to embarrass someone publicly. In fact, the commentaries on that Talmud, on that statement, they ask that how could you say such a thing? There's only 3 mitzvahs that we're supposed to allow ourselves to die for. And it doesn't say in any of them about embarrassing someone in public. So how could you count that? How could you say throw yourself in a furnace instead of embarrassing someone in public? That's not one of the mitzvahs you're supposed to die for. So the commentary Tosfos on the Talmud, he says it is included, and it just doesn't mention all. This is one of those mitzvahs that a person should actually die for. I think he says it's not mentioned, maybe because there are a few others that aren't included. I have to look up exactly what the answer is, but somehow it is one of the mitzvahs a person should let themselves be killed for instead of embarrassing someone in public. Embarrassing someone in public is like killing them because the blood rushes to their face turns red, and then it turns white, and it's considered like killing them. And there's also a statement in the Talmud that says that when you speak gossip, you kill three people: the person who says it, the person who hears it, and the person who it's said about, which means that it's not only about speaking gossip, it's also about listening, because you're sort of endorsing, you're giving a stamp to the person who's speaking it. So you have to be careful if you are a accomplice to the sin, to the murder, because the person who's saying it and you're listening, you're also part of the murder. And then the person who it's said about. So these are the a few statements about how careful we have to be with our tongue. And it's not easy, but especially when you have a good line to say that's funny, and but it's at the expense of someone else. And then it says that the tongue, it says the death, life and death is at the hand of the tongue. Hachayim v'hamaves biyad haloshin, which means that really life is also, you could give someone life with your tongue. If you compliment someone in the right way, and you're careful how you word it, it also is it's a powerful, the way you say something and what you say is extremely powerful. You could give someone life. You could convince someone not to commit suicide. A good compliment could push away suicidal thoughts in someone else. You never know. It could build someone up to keep their job. It could strengthen someone to get through college. Someone who's thinking about dropping out. It could it could help someone, motivate someone to work harder. The tongue is tremendous power, unbelievable power. Yes, Ben.
I want to say two things. One, we had something a few weeks ago about Simchat Banim. He was an importer that the customs people went to visit. But about this story today, I want to say it doesn't even have to be something wrong. It could be something true that you don't want to, not allowed to say it about somebody, even something that is not negative. If you say something positive to one person, it might reflect negative on his enemy. So you have to be careful both ways with the story.
I had that, and it didn't.
I think what you mean is,
Didn't acknowledge me.
I think what you mean is that 1 second, Thomas, do you want to say something? Yeah. Okay. One more second.
That's okay.
Yeah, one more second. I'm just answering Ben. So the language is very key. You have to be careful, especially if you're telling it to someone who's an enemy. If you're telling an enemy something good about someone, so what you're really doing is getting them to fight back and argue and tell you how bad that person is. So if you're telling it to an enemy, that's a problem. You don't want to talk positive about someone who other people, don't like. That I think that's what you're referring to, Ben. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good point. Yes, Thomas.
I'm thinking that passing an examination on this subject should be prerequisite for anybody wanting to enter politics.
Right. Right.
Rabbi Smith.
Anybody that wants to run FaceTime or
Uh-huh.
Twitter.
Yes, David.
Years ago, I took a course after I became from Jews for Judaism of how to counter Christian missionaries. And one of the main arguments that Christian missionaries use, and I think that this is a direct quote from Yashka, that he approached the rabbis and tried to minimize minimize the kashrus, to minimize the idea of being kosher. And when they tried to challenge him and said, this kosher is from the Torah. And he said, it's more important what comes out of your mouth than what goes in. As if to say, if you speak nice, you don't have to worry about being kosher because kosher is not such a big deal. And the Christian missionaries used that quote that was supposedly from Yashka. I'm not sure if I saw it in the because we had to study parts of this book with commentary that explained to us how this was false and that was false. So we knew what to answer Christian missionaries. And one of the things that they used to say was this quote, in order to try to belittle certain mitzvahs, that you didn't have to keep kosher, you didn't have to do bris milah, you didn't have to, they changed certain things, and as a way of justifying it, they said this quote.
Very interesting. So what David is really telling us is that this point is not to minimize the value of keeping kosher or what goes in your mouth, is just to emphasize that we also have to be equally as careful what goes out of our mouth, but we definitely have to be careful what goes into our mouth as well. And the truth is that one thing leads to the other, because if you charge a car with a certain type of battery, it'll go a certain distance, or if you have a certain type of ink in a printer, it gives it enough ink or a certain type of ink for what it's printing, like black ink. But if you put in colored ink, it'll give it out in color. If we put into our bodies black ink, guess what's going to come out? We're going to say things that are connected to unholiness because we're putting unholy things into our mouth. And so if we put holy things into proper things, kosher things that are potentially holy, in other words, anything that's kosher means that it has the potential to connect it with holiness. If we bring that into our body, then our energy, we will be able to say things that are also positive, because the energy inside us we will give off a kosher energy. And so again, it's like it's almost like a printer. I guess that's a good example. So if you have kosher stuff coming in, you can you have the potential. It's easier for kosher stuff to come out, and you'll say the right things. But you have to, but you still have to be careful, and you have to be extra careful because it is very dangerous. It's interesting. A scribe once told me that you have to be more careful when you write tefillin than when you are a mashgiach, when you're when you are the supervisor for the kosher agency, he said, because when you write the tefillin, the person is wearing it day after day after day. When you supervise food, he said, it's a one-time thing. You did a sin, they ate non-kosher, at least tomorrow, they'll eat kosher. You messed up once, it's not like messing up a million times. It's sort of like it's really even more, you have to be more careful for tefillin and mezuzahs. The mezuzah on your door, in a certain sense, carries more weight, or it has a certain element that's strong. I shouldn't say it carries more weight, but it has a certain element that's very important compared to the kashrus of food. At the same time, we know that the great tzaddikim were always very careful at what they ate. And really, that's because it really goes hand in hand. If you have to be careful. If you want to act like a Jew, you got to put the right type of battery. You got to put a Jewish battery in you. And this way you produce, you act. Your fruits are Jewish fruits. But if you eat like a guy, then your fruits will be non-Jewish fruits. You'll be goyish treif of fruits. You'll say things that aren't right. You don't have the same energy for bringing holiness and goodness to the world. So, which also
I'm just thinking with kosher food, there's the idea of nullified 1 in 60. But if you have a wrong letter in a pair of tefillin, there's no nullified 1 in 60.
That's also true, right? That's an interesting point. There is a concept also on Passover that very God-fearing people, they are overly careful about whatever they eat on Passover. Overly careful. And the reason for that is based on a statement of the famous Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, the Yid Hakadosh, the holy Arizal of Shvat. He said that if a person doesn't sin on Passover from eating anything with chametz, he won't sin a whole year. So people try to be extra careful on Pesach because it'll help them not sin a whole year, because Pesach, what you eat on Pesach is supposed to be bread of humility. We're supposed to eat matzah. And all sins come from arrogance. So if you're extra careful not to have even a tiny drop of something that's a little that's chametz, that's non-matzah, if you eat anything that's not unleavened, even a drop, it somehow will it'll express itself during the year, and you will have some connection to sin. It'll be much easier for you to sin. So a lot of the mitzvahs in the Torah are, of course, an obligation in their own right, but they also have a domino effect, almost like the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, and the mitzvah doers are more mitzvah doers. You do something right, you start something right, you do something right initially, it'll help you to do more mitzvahs, you'll do more things right. So if you are careful on Passover to eat 100% unleavened bread and not even a drop of leaven, so that will help you throughout the year not to come to any sin. If you're careful throughout the year, also for anything, that you only bring into your mouth something that's kosher, so of course that'll help you in things you say and things you do. At least it'll give you extra spirituality that will help you overcome. Now, it doesn't mean that if a person wants to sin, they're not going to be able to sin. You will be able to sin. It'll just be a little harder for you to sin if you only have kosher food. It makes it because your body is a little more spiritual, a little more sensitive to sinning. And of course, we want to stay the farthest away of any sin, especially a sin with the mouth, which could be devastating. Such a sin, causing someone to be embarrassed, ruining someone's life. I mean, you say the wrong thing, you never know what could happen from that. So, so that's a story. That's a powerful story with the Reb Simcha Bunim of Pshischa, excuse me, and how how he learned a great powerful lesson. The next story is a story of a villager who came to a great tzaddik, Reb Yitzchak Isaac of Zidichov. And this was a story where the villager had a business opportunity. And the opportunity was to rent an inn. As we all know, that's what was common in the olden days. They would rent an inn from the pirates, and they would have they would have a small type of a bar, and they would have rooms for like a hotel, and this way, that's how they would make a living. So this Jewish man, villager, was asking the tzaddik if it's a good idea to rent this inn. And he explained what his dilemma was. The inn was being able to rent very cheap. They were offering a very cheap price because there was no local water. You had to go far to get water. So it was very inconvenient. And therefore they couldn't charge the highest price for rent for such an inn. So that was his question. On the one hand, it's a great opportunity because it's such a cheap, such an inexpensive opportunity. Excuse me. But on the other hand, it's going to be a tough inn to run if you don't have running water, and to always have to bring it from a faraway source is not going to be so simple. So he asked the tzaddik. The tzaddik told him, he said, listen, he said, start digging, but rent it. He told him, you rent it and start digging. And then come back to me, dig a few feet, and then come back to me. So he did that. He started a dug, came back to the tzaddik, and the tzaddik told him, he said, here, there's a verse in the Torah that I want you to write on a piece of paper. And you'll throw this in the hole that you dug. So he wrote, it says, and the servants of Yitzchak dug a well, and they came and told him, we found water. So what's interesting is that this man is going to the Reb Yitzchak Isaac of Zidichov, and Reb Yitzchak Isaac of Zidichov told him, to come to me after you dig a little. I should mention one more thing that I left out. He said, come to me for a Shabbos, and then I'll tell you what to do. So he came to Reb Yitzchak of Zidichov for Shabbos. After Shabbos, he told him, go back and write this on a piece of paper and throw it into the hole. So he wrote this verse about the servants of Isaac dug well, and they told Isaac that we found water. So write this and throw it in into the well that you dug. So he did that, and sure enough, immediately water started coming up to this new well that he had right on the property. So it was perfect. He's got cheap rent, and low overhead, and he's got the whole reason why it was cheap was because there was no water. Now he's got a well of water coming. Everything is perfect. However, someone got jealous. Someone found out about this, another Yid, and he was jealous. He said, so he went to the Paretz, the landlord, and he said, listen, I'll rent it for more money. What are you renting it for this guy? I'll rent it for more money. So sure enough, this guy, after some time, maybe a year, 2 years, he lost the inn because the other guy was willing to pay much greater price. He convinced the landlord to rent it to him. So this guy ran back to Reb Yitzchak Isaac of Zidichov, and he told the Rebbe what happened. So he said, "Don't worry. Here, write this on a piece of paper and throw it in the well." It says, "All the wells which his father's servants had dug, the Plishtim stopped them up and filled them with earth." So he threw this paper in the well. All of a sudden, there's no more water. The water stopped. It stopped flowing with water. So sure enough, the other owner is now in the inn. He's got no running water. And they called a plumber, nothing doing. They tried digging a little deeper. And ultimately he's losing, he can't make a living. In the meantime, he's paying a higher rent for this inn. And there's no way to make it work. He's got to bring water from far away, and he's basically had to give up and left. And so the landlord came back to the previous innkeeper and told him, "Listen, I'll give it back to you. I want you to rent it." So he said, "Let me ask my Rebbe." So he ran back to the Rebbe, to his tzaddik, to Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac, and Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac said, "No problem, rent it. Make sure you get the same price that you got initially, the earlier price, and rent it. And here, write this on the well. We're going to get the water back. You'll write this. It says, and they dug another well and did not quarrel over it. And he called the place Rehovot, which means for now Hashem has made room for us and we shall be fruitful in the land." So sure enough, all of a sudden the water came back. He rented the inn. He's got the water back, and he made he kept it. The landlord realized he better just keep this innkeeper and be satisfied, be happy with what he's got. So and the man made a good living. Now, so this is a very interesting story because number one, it's not the popular way of the tzaddikim of what they normally, we don't normally hear of writing verses on a piece of paper and making miracles. So it's a little different than the typical Chassidic story. Although you never know how the story, they're all different types of stories, but it adds a little different style to it. And another thing is very interesting that the verse said the servants of Isaac came to him and told him that we found water. And I find that very interesting because his name was Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac. And he told him, "Come to me for Shabbos." Why did he need him to come to him for a Shabbos? He should have just said, "Come to me and I'll tell you what to do." He needed him to come to him for Shabbos, I think, because he needed him to be considered a servant of Isaac's. He needed him to be a follower of his. And by him coming for Shabbos, it made the verse apply to him more. He is a follower of Rabbi. In other words, until now, he was just like, okay, this is a tzaddik, I'm going to him. But he didn't really have much of a relationship other than he felt this must be a great man. But now he came to him for Shabbos. It sort of developed a stronger following. And this is my own thought. You can argue with me. I don't know if this is correct. I'm just sharing with you a thought that it sort of made the verse come to light. That this is, that's a powerful thing to make water come out of nowhere, just digging a few feet into the ground. Now here in Florida, maybe it's not such a big deal. But in that place, they tried it. I guarantee you, they tried it numerous times to get water because that landlord wanted to rent it for a higher fee. He could find no one who wanted to rent it. So he obviously tried numerous times to get water. And here in Florida, we have the Everglades and the whole, you just dig a few feet, you'll get water. But I'm sure they tried many times over there and could not get water. So he was trying to use the the power of the Torah, which is the next thing. The Torah is the blueprint for the world, and Torah has infinite potential and power in it. And here the words of the Torah, we see how they had an effect, an impact to actually make the water come by just writing those words on a piece of paper. Now, I'm not telling anyone that they should try this trick, but the tzaddik was able to reveal that. But it's a very interesting method of this miracle that the tzaddik did by writing the words of the Torah and revealing a different meaning, and affecting the world and helping out another Yid to make a livelihood. Now, another thing that this is similar to is the story of the golden calf. The Jewish people left Egypt. 49 days later, they got the Torah. And then 40 days later, they worshiped the golden calf. And how did they worship the golden calf? Well, how did it come to be? How did they get a golden calf? So the men took the gold from their wives and threw it into a furnace, and a calf looked like a calf came out. But how did the gold, if you throw gold into a furnace, I mean, I don't know what it looked like, but I guess it's a little surprising that it all of a sudden formed into a calf. So the way it worked, the way it actually, the miracle of the golden calf, the way Hashem made it work was, there was someone by the name of Micha who was with the Jewish people, was with Moses when they were leaving Egypt. And one of the jobs that Moses had was that he was supposed to take the bones of Joseph with them. And Joseph had asked the Jewish people to take his bones with them. Where were Joseph's bones? They were down in the Nile River. Now, how was Moses, who was not known to be a diver into, wasn't known to be a good swimmer, I don't know, to find the bones on the bottom of the Nile River? How was he supposed to get them? So he wrote on a plate, he wrote Ale Shur. Ale Shur means the ox should come up. And that was a play on the words, because Joseph was called the shor, an ox. B'char shoyroi hadarloi, b'karnei re'im karnov, bohem amim yenagach. Bohem amim yenagach. V'hem rivvais Ephraim, v'hem alfei Menashe. This is a verse in the last Torah portion. So it calls Joseph an ox. So, the truth is, it also says Jacob blessed Joseph, Benois Tzoada Ale Shur, that the daughters will bend down. They'll step. They'll in order to get a glimpse of Joseph. Joseph's beauty was supposed to be amazing. So So Joseph, so Moses took those words, Ale Shur, and and used those words sort of like a play on the words, and he wrote it on a plate. Ale Shur also means the ox should come up. So Ale Shur meant that they will take a glimpse of Joseph, excuse me. But so Ale Shur was said about, Jacob said it about Joseph. But it also means Ale Shur, the ox should come up. So, which is referring to Joseph. So Moses wrote this on a plate. He wrote those words that Jacob said about Joseph. He wrote them on a plate, which had two meanings. And when he threw it down into the Nile, the bones of Joseph came up. It sort of like affected the world and made the bones of Joseph rise by writing the words of the Torah, Ale Shur. Now, Micha was an individual that was saved from being placed in the. He was a child. He was saved from being placed in the wall to fill up the quota. Anyway, his life was spared, and he was with Moses, and he took that plate with him. Now, after the revelation at Sinai, Moses was in heaven, and the Jewish people wanted to create some type of entity to take Moses's place. So Micha was there, and he took the plate, and he said, let me throw this into the furnace. Now, what did it say on that plate? Ale Shur, an ox should come up. Guess what happened? A golden calf was created. A calf was formed from that plate, made that a calf would be formed. So again, this all boils down to the words of the Torah being written on something, and it has tremendous power to affect the world and to make some type of a miraculous change or do something miraculous. So this is, I find that story very similar to this story of Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac of Hummel. So it's sort of, if you summarize it, it's the power of Torah, the power of the Torah, how God used the Torah as a blueprint to create the world, which means that the Torah has the power to do anything in the world and even change the world. And you see that from both of those stories, the story of Moses, which with Micha, and ultimately the golden calf, which was used for the negative, initially was used for the positive. Moshe used it to bring up the bones of Joseph. Again, it said Ale Shur, which was the words of the Torah, which meant really about vision, but it also had another meaning, and Moses used it for an alternative meaning, and it made Joseph's bones come up. And that same plate was then used in a negative way by making the golden calf. And so the power of the Torah from that story, and of course this story here with Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac 3 times using the words of the Torah to either make the well in the first place, stop up the well, and then renew the well, re-energize the well. So the reopen the well. So that's the story. And then I think that idea of the student of being a servant of Yitzchak, of Isaac, I think is a very interesting point, that he wanted it to fit with the verse to have an effect, that he had to come for Shabbos. I think that's an interesting thought, that he became like a follower maybe. Okay, so now comes the next story.
Rabbi Smith,
Yeah, yes.
I just found out about the Yid Hakadosh, why he was called that.
Yeah.
So it says that because his Rebbe had the same name as him, his Rebbe was the Chozeh of Lublin, Yaakov Yitzchak, and therefore he would not call his name by the Rebbe's name, and he would say, I'm just another Jew. So the contemporaries would call him HaYehudi HaKodesh, and then it became the Yid HaKodesh.
Thank you, David, for looking that up. That's great. I still like your other explanation, even though it might not be originally correct.
I think I might have been thinking of the Opter of the Ohev Yisrael. I was getting mixed up.
Right, right, right. Very nice. Very nice. Which shows how important it is to give how they respected their tzaddikim, their righteous teachers, to the extent that he didn't want his name to be the same. It's very interesting because there's a number of people that there are a few people in the world that their name is Menachem Schneerson. And they have a problem when people ask them what their name is, especially Lubavitcher, and they say their name is Menachem Schneerson. People are like, what? You're joking. But because their cousins are great, fifth cousins, however, but the name Schneerson it's not uncommon. There's a few people with that, few families with the name Schneerson. And so, it becomes problematic, almost a little like embarrassing, especially if they're a rabbi and have the same name. So in any event, the next story is a story of the son-in-law of Reb Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev. And Reb Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev, when he married off his daughter to this Reb Yitzchak of Nizhiz, he stipulated how long he's going to support him. It was the common custom in those days that the father-in-law supported the son-in-law so that the son-in-law could study Torah. And sure enough, they agreed upon for 4 years. At least the father-in-law was agreeable up to 4 years the most. And they asked him, they said, it's not the common thing to limit it to 4 years. Normally it may be 10 years or, it's normally more than that. A lot of people probably it was unlimited. However long you want to study. But with Reb Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev, he said, no, absolutely not. I'm not committing to more than 4 years. And sure enough, even though to the surprise of everyone, that's what, that was what he agreed to. And turned out that Reb Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev passed away 4 years later. And so he knew how long his life would be. He knew how long he was going to live, and he couldn't make a commitment. He sort of had a vision of his life, of how long he's here on earth. He had that vision. Of course, we all would like to know how long we will live, and even King David didn't really know how long he would live. He knew what day he's going to die on. But somehow Reb Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev had that vision, or he had a vision that he can only commit 4 years for what, somehow he knew. But it's interesting how, the tzaddikim have some type of a vision that lets them, because no one wants to commit something and then not fulfill it, even if it's against their ability. Still, it's a promise, it's a commitment, and Hashem didn't let him go against, desecrate his oath. Hashem made it possible for him to fulfill his commitments, which is a great blessing, and possibly connected to what we were talking about earlier, that if you're very careful about what you eat, and you're careful about other mitzvahs, it'll play itself out, it'll express itself in the fact that Hashem will allow you to fulfill all your promises, or help you, in different things that you do. You'll have Hashem's help, siyata deshmaya, help from above. you will have that go along with you. You know, of course, we hope that we can all merit that Hashem's there helping make everything work out, that we can, you know, have things run smoothly and keep all of our promises and so on. But it all boils down to being careful on things that we're able to, and Hashem like helps us go along. As I say, the rich get richer. It's based in the spiritual worlds, because those that if you try hard, Hashem then makes things go smoother. It's almost like a diet. The first day and the first week are the hardest. Once you get through the first week, it goes much smoother. You're able to, if you're able to control yourself from these things that you really love, the afterwards, it's you get used to it, and Hashem makes it easier for you. Okay, and then there's the next story. Hope I'll be able to finish it. It's a story of a typical story, but it's not the typical ending. The typical story of the innkeeper who doesn't have money to pay his rent, to the parrots, to the landowner. And he doesn't know what to do. He's totally, he's down to his last gold ruble. He almost down to nothing. And he really is, and rent is due. Not only rent is due, rent was due last month and the month before. So they're about to throw him in the dungeon. Him and his family. And it wasn't uncommon in the olden days. That's what they would do. If you didn't pay the rent, they would throw you in the dungeon. Someone came along to redeem you, you were saved. If not, you died of hunger. And so the wife told her husband, she said, listen, go to the tzaddik, the Baal Shem Tov, and ask him what to do. And he said, absolutely not. I don't believe in these things. I don't go to these. They make up stories about him. Miracle workers, no such thing. Miracle workers, baloney. It's all nonsense. And she says, no, chas v'shalom. You have to have trust in the tzaddikim and the righteous people, and they're holy. They serve Hashem. And he says, nah, come on, it's not true. It's this. And she says, no, it is true, and you're wrong. And he does miracles, and the miracles come true because he is connected to Hashem, and he has, Hashem has a special love for him, and whatever he wants, Hashem does. And because he serves Hashem out of love, she convinced her husband finally to go to the Baal Shem Tov. Okay. So he went to the Baal Shem Tov after being convinced by his wife he wasn't going to get away with it. Anyway, the family is about to get thrown into the dungeon. So he travels all the way there, and Baal Shem Tov says, listen, go take a stroll on a Sunday, and the first person that offers you something to buy, don't even look at it, just buy it. Whatever the price is, buy it. And then come back to me. So the man thanks the Baal Shem Tov, he leaves, and he starts laughing. What type of mishigas, what type of craziness is this? I should buy something. What is he, a joker? He thinks that I'm going to fall for this? There's no way I'm going to go to take a stroll on a Sunday. First of all, no one's even going to come to me and offer me to buy something. And then to think that I should buy it without looking at it and whatever the price is. I mean, what is he thinking? And then, I'm going to come back to him. He has no, what does he lose if nothing, if nothing comes out of this whole thing? He's making a joke out of me. What does he know? He's telling me to buy something. That's his great miracle. That's his holiness, to go buy something in the store. This is absolutely, people make up stories about him. It can't be, there's nothing to it. So he goes home, and now his wife screams at him. She says, "Are you crazy? He told you what to do. This is we're going to have a miracle is going to happen. Yeah, Hashem is going to help us. You have to listen to the tzaddik. And you have to listen and realize that we don't have to understand everything. What are we to understand? We're supposed to, we know everything. We can understand everything. This is these great tzaddikim, they're in a different league. We don't understand we understand Hashem's ways. We're just a little, our understanding is nothing. We have to follow the tzaddik. The tzaddik is here to help the Jewish people, to help us. He's our Navi, our prophet, he's Hashem sent the tzaddik here to our generation to help us, to strengthen us, to support us, to provide whatever we need. And he gave you specifically, a great, he's giving us a great miracle. Let's do it. Let's follow it. He already went all the way there. Let's realize that this is what he's telling us to do. So sure enough, he goes on the Sunday and he walks, takes a stroll. And to his amazement, someone actually stops him and says, "Look, I have the fleece of a sheep and I'd like to sell it to you." So the guy says, "How much is it?" He says, 1 gold ruble. He says, "Okay." Sure enough, that was exactly how much he had in his pocket. And the Baal Shem Tov told him, of course, to buy it without even looking at it. He gave the money, didn't even look at it. And now he's got a fleece of a sheep. Okay. So he takes the fleece of the sheep. He goes to his wife. He goes home. And he gives another big laughter. What is it, craziness? You think we're going to get out of the dungeon with some fleece of a sheep? How is this going to help us, save us? We wasted so much time, and now I gave my last penny, my last dollar I gave to buy this fleece of a sheep. This is absolutely absurd, and we're continuing with this craziness of following some guy with a big black hat and a beard. This is absolutely absurd to go and follow some guy. What does he know about making money? He makes jokes. And so the wife says, "No, absolutely not. This is the tzaddik. We have to follow him." And so she tells him that you have to now go to the Baal Shem Tov. He says, "What, are you crazy? I'm going to take another trip there. We're going to continue on this joking, the whole craziness. We're going to follow through. And we're going to continue the story. It's a little long, the story, so we'll continue it next week. Mitzvah Hashem. We're going to stop here. It's a good place to stop. Stay tuned. Mitzvah Hashem next week. Have a wonderful week, everyone. See you tomorrow. Mitzvah Hashem.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi, for the cliffhanger.
Thank you, Rabbi. Good night.
Thank